Hello and welcome to a very special Digital Futures session on the Metaverse. This is a first for us. We are presenting the Metaverse in the Metaverse today, and it's something we're looking forward to in terms of the future of
recording in progress
itself. Today, we're delighted to be collaborating with Matheus Stancati of Sunken Blimp. Sunken Blimp is both an architectural platform, a studio that produces designs, but also it's been operating a platform where they have been staging events in the Metaverse already. So today, I'll be handing over to Matheus. Matheus, I should say, I know very well. He was one of my students a few years ago, one of the best students I've ever had in my entire career. He won the prize for the best thesis award. And since then, he's, I think, been designing, the future, a potential future of architecture alongside designs themselves. So today's session is both, it's about the future in the sense that we are talking about maybe how we'll be operating in the future, but also we'll be handing over to someone who is very much of the future, someone I'm sure is going to have a huge impact on the future of architecture. Let me briefly simply say, before I hand over to Matheus, that we have tomorrow a very special session on the future of the office, which may itself possibly operate within the Metaverse in a few years' time, where we're continuing the AI Spring series, looking at this time the books that are being published on AI. So tomorrow's session is building upon the weekly session we've been having and looking in further detail into the future. But today, or rather tomorrow, I'm not quite sure which text we should be in today, we are looking at the future and the possible ways in which we can operate. So I'd like to welcome Matheus to the stage and to thank him for taking on this Herculean task of dragging Digital Futures into the future itself. Welcome, Matheus.
All right. Thank you very much, Neil, for the introduction, and welcome everyone. I am so excited to be hosting and helping you guys host one of the first, I believe the first one, right? Digital Futures in the Metaverse. It's such a pleasure. That's something I've been working with for the past almost 2 years. And it's really, really exciting to be here. So one of the things that I would like to start off by saying is that this virtual space, we are currently all over the world, right? And Digital Futures is very keen to that. We always have people from all over the world presenting on Zoom. And this is true to this space right here, right? Even the camera that you guys are seeing right now is being hosted from the Netherlands. And we have here people from all over the United States and other countries joining at the same time in a virtual space, which, only adds to the conversation, because today we're going to be talking about the Metaverse, and we're going to have 4 different perspectives on the Metaverse with our invited guests. So one of them will be me, and I'll introduce it in a little bit. And then we're also going to have Thisal Jayasuriya, who's going to be talking about the investor approach to the Metaverse. Basically, the Metaverse, what the number tell us, and talking about, why this is such a big deal in the market scenario that we find ourselves in today. And then after that, we will have James Ghattas, Dr. James Ghattas, and he is a board licensed neurologist, and he will be talking about medicine in the Metaverse and his approach and his experience presenting medical lectures in a world like this, and how virtual spaces can bridge the gap between medical education and the world of medicine itself. And then we're going to have Kuba from Hyperliving, and he will be talking about the design process of virtual spaces through a virtual environment, which is such a cool topic, such a cool process, amazing work. And we're super excited to have you guys here today watching this Digital Futures. If you guys see me here, I am currently in the center of the stage wearing the blue suit, jumping around. So that would be me. So I will start off by presenting a little bit about what we do at Sunken Blimp. And I'm just going to pull up the screen. And chances are you guys see it in full screen, but then you guys, whoever's in the virtual space, you can close off the screen itself and watch it in the virtual space, which I believe it's a bit more of an interactive type of way of viewing. So Neil introduced a little bit of what Sunken Blimp is, and we even were talking before the live stream went on, but it's hard to describe what Sunken Blimp is, because in the end, it's an interdisciplinary studio looking at different approaches of how to put design or view design from a virtual space. And it started by questioning one thing that I think we all question at some point: what is reality? right? If you talk about virtual reality or extended reality, mixed reality, aligned reality, no matter which reality, we have to understand what reality is. And I always find it helpful to remind ourselves that we are biological beings, so take this as your daily shot of reminding that you're a biological machine. And I like looking at this image, which is Dr. Rufus B. Weaver and the nervous system of Harriet Cole, which is a patient who donated her body to science in the 19th century. And this is all that is connected to the brain, right? We have to remember that our brain is this alien controlling and our bodies and our thoughts, and we perceive the world in a certain way. And by no means this is going to be a neuroscience lecture, but I like to view the brain as the main bridge of reality, because that is how we see the world, that is how we feel the world, that is how we perceive what we call reality. And my interest in the virtual environment came from this question of how we perceive, how we view reality. And in my academic years with New Leach, I looked at perception and I focused on how we perceive things visually as light bounces on objects. Our retina takes in, converts it into electrical signals, goes through the thalamus, and then it goes into the primary visual cortex. And then that information travels two ways. One is the dorsal stream, where we perceive where things are in space, and the other one, the ventral stream, where we perceive what those things are. And what's interesting about perception is that our primary visual cortex is always telling the thalamus what it thinks it sees. And then there's a feedback loop of information. So we're always predicting and augmenting what we think reality is in that sense. And then for my thesis and the project that led from it, my focus was on this process, how we perceive reality and how we augment it. So then my question in that sense is, what if we can actually collect the light before it hits our eyes, process it externally, using AI tools or machine learning tools to process it in a different way, and then feed it back into the eyes. So then we change perspective. Well, not perspective, perception. And that led into the research, the first time analyzing how we can modify virtual spaces. And at the time during the pandemic, the focus was changing my pandemic room, right? My lockdown room, to expand the different perceptions we can have in a physical space, digitalizing the space, and then modifying the digital version. So in this process, I chose to go with the idea of memories, right? How can we augment physical space using memories? I used a few selections of memories that were very keen to me, that made me feel a certain way and had some bio signal response to my perception. And in the end, aligning the digital modifications to my physical environment. How can if I can modify the physical, if I can modify the digital, now I can align and perceive this digital environment through my physical existence in that room. So this research aimed to unleash or unlock different versions of that reality. What if I can access different versions of the physical space, different dimensions per se, using different memories or different sets of data set to train that space. Now, of course, that in this result, this is not metaverse, right? Because this is a very individualistic approach to how I perceive the world. And when we're talking about virtual spaces or reality, reality is not something necessarily individual, but something collective that we all share. And I would like to bring even a quote by a new set, that our reality is just a hallucination we all agree on, right? So there needs to be a social element to this in order to be considered reality in this train of thought, right? And when we talk about the metaverse and virtual worlds, we need to talk about the social aspects as well as the communication. And I mean, we can go on about the metaverse itself, but the finance of it, the economic system, it becomes a different version of the world we live in. So that started the question within Sunken Blimp. And I would like to bring in 2 points. One, which is the research that we're currently doing, trying to expand approaches to reality, approaches to, how many worlds we can access from this social environment. And then 2, the different projects we have been doing in the past, which allows us to work with accessibility. In that sense, right now we don't live in a world where everyone has access to the technology that allows for some of these experiments we're doing. Therefore, how can we bring in virtual worlds and virtual spaces to the most amount of people possible and achieve it in a way that it honestly in the market today, it's viable and it provides value. So the first one, we were very interested in how to connect virtual worlds to the physical world we live in, right? The same way that you're watching this through your YouTube live stream and you're seeing the screen, right, showcasing information. There's a bridge between the physical and virtual world. And now we were interested in this window type of scenario. How can we have a virtual augmentation to space that allows you to perceive almost like an indentation or a tunnel into this environment? And what you were seeing there, represented in a diagram, this is just when a subject is moving through a space and looking through this opening or this window. The idea is that the algorithm or the system would be able to understand the subject and understand the perceived perception. Therefore, we can create fully digital windows that look into the virtual world. And this is what the virtual environment is seeing, right? A 3D camera is analyzing my body. Therefore, it knows where my head is. So it's projecting what would be my view if there was actual a window on that wall, and then project it into a flat surface. In this case, the question becomes, are we bringing the physical world into a virtual environment or bringing the virtual environment into the physical world? If you think about it, we are bringing the virtual views from a physical environment, yes. But at the same time, if this physical, this room now is floating inside a so-called metaverse space, right? There's an actual environment with other rooms flying around. It's almost like we're bringing the physical space into this virtual realm. And this is the backbones of it, right? Perceiving this skylight that is projected into a very flat roof. And this research took different levels, how we can actually showcase objects. And I like showing this video because this is a prototype of a greenhouse project we're doing. And through this fake window or this artificial crevice on the wall, we had there the virtual models in real time. And that blends into the room, almost becoming an extension. And it follows my perspective. So every time I move around, it becomes part of the physical room we're living in. The research took different levels, like I mentioned, and this is how we can embed digital materials into physical objects as well. In this case, this is clearly an artificial rock formation. And then we were interested in seeing how can we actually bring the digital rock texture, the virtual material into a physical object using, bump maps and normal maps to create the illusion of texture that is not there. And then augmenting how we can perceive physical objects themselves. And this can take different levels, like this model of the room, how if we can digitalize a texture, digitalize the visual properties of an object, now we can modify the digital the same way. In this case, completely, disrupting it and making it delusional, or completely modifying the textures, changing what the environment is. In this case, a library with fire, because why not, right? Transforming your room into something that is clearly not reality, but then raises the question, what is reality? And then talking about the future, we don't envision necessarily that in the future, everyone's going to have virtual VR glasses and everyone will be completely disassociated from the real world. But instead, this bridge between physical and digital, and there's going to be a much more connected way of viewing the world and additions to the physical. It's going to be a continuation of what we already do physically. And then we're talking about many things in the future as well, like Neuralink type of scenario where virtual worlds can be perceived directly into the brain without having the need to transfer that into visual aids and all. But then, like I mentioned, this is one of the things we're doing at Sunken Blimp. And what I'd like to show is actually what we're doing, with the market and with there was an issue with the screen. Sorry about that. I think someone moved the screen here. Just put it back in place. All right. So one thing that we realized, right, the idea of the social aspect and bringing people together. In the beginning of this year, in February, we opened this stage, the stage that you guys are seeing right now. This is the Sunken Blimp stage, where we hosted a lot of different virtual presentations and virtual events in the course of this past year, 2022. And this was a space created for people that are curious about these things, curious about the future of society, the future of virtual spaces, all of that, to come together, share ideas, and collaborate, right? And we designed the space. Of course, I can talk about the design process. It's all one continuous surface. There's no separation between stage and audience, which means that anyone can take the stage at any point. But more than that, this is a digital environment, which means that it can be modified all the time. So since the beginning, we've been taking in the feedback and the sentiment of the community to modify its geometry, understand what in a virtual space makes someone more prone to open a conversation, to engage, to actually discuss things after a lecture, looking at the actual response from people and the interactions to make design decisions as the space bettered itself. And we started off, the first public conversation we had was with Mariana Capogueira from Zaha. And so far, we had a lot of different presentations. This is actually Dr. James Ghattas presenting, a medical model. And the graphics, you guys look at this, like the graphics were cringe. It was really hard to stay here for a long period of time in the beginning because, it was very rudimentary, but we needed to go through this phase to realize, how do we show information in a three-dimensional environment? How do we teach? How do we, this is Neil Leach on the stage the first time, but how do we actually present? How do we best use this world? And so far, after having over 30 people presenting here, having full-on lectures and over almost 6,000 people on this stage, we realized that design choices, they make a difference. Content makes a difference, of course, but every time we change an angle, every time we change a little modification or texture in this material, we're taking notes of the sentiment, and it becomes better and better for our target goal. And as of recently, we've been applying some of this knowledge to design spaces for other types of companies and other types of goals. The idea that we can perhaps design a headquarters for a company to have meetings with clients, which sounds, boring in a way, but it is exciting to think of the limitations we have and the limitations we don't have anymore because we're in a virtual space, and how to apply that information of behavior, people's behavior in a virtual space, to make some of these design decisions. These are some of the lectures we've been hosting, as well as some of the other spaces. The idea of presenting using virtual models, right? To take someone into the project you're speaking about. This is Professor Tim Beatley from University of Virginia, taught there for over 30 years, an incredible mind, presenting biophilia, showing different projects in Singapore. And that reaches a different level, right? And then some of the projects we've been working on, such as the Rock House, making a flexible stage that can change from day and night, hosting all different sorts of events, from company events to birthday parties to client meetings, all of that. As well as what's valuable to the market, right? What is currently today that brings a value to different companies. So in this case, this is a project we're doing for SoFlo Jeeps, who make custom Jeeps in a virtual world. And they had a problem because a lot of their clients, they're out of state or international clients, and they have a hard time touring and seeing some of these Jeeps and the different customization tools, so that the virtual space allows for all of these people to meet together and, experience the product without having to be in a physical location. Projects for communities that are, aiming to grow their community and having a community sentiment, like the Seed Squatch. They are a cinematography and music community, so they have spaces to showcase their movies and premiere their albums in a virtual environment. One of these is, this project is called Treehouse, Expecting Owner, for a private investor, looking at how we can do a treehouse in a world where gravity is not a big deal. Using some algorithm generated projects to create galleries, right? That thousands of galleries using algorithm. Therefore, we can create unique spaces and parametrically designed spaces, and generate galleries that anyone could take a unique one, right, and claim their own. And then looking at these different features as a way of studying how do people interact in different conditions, the processions, the way we look at architecture. If you're going from a tight space to an open space, all of that, we can just mass produce something and then analyze public sentiment, as well as mass producing different approaches to, for example, mansions, right? Or the philosophy of what a mansion is, through the eyes of a virtual environment. And then the projects go on. This is a proposal for a theater, Dracarys Theater, for the HBO show House of Dragons. The proposal for it, and it was pretty exciting to work on. And now we're like bridging away from the limits of what a physical building is, but at the same time looking at what's next in this sort of social interaction, thinking that geometry now is untied from the physical limitations. And this would not be possible without the amazing Sunken Blimp team, which I'm so grateful for. And I just want to say thank you for everyone in the Sunken Blimp team. You guys are awesome. And I can't wait to see, the next thing in the future, what we're doing next, and all this, how these experimentations that we're doing in parallel with the projects will align for us to create this next phase of what virtual environments could be, especially bridging with the physical. So thank you very much. This is a little introduction of what Sunken Blimp is, and I'm excited to see the next presentations.
Thanks, Matheus. That was tremendous.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So now that we went through the first presentation, I would like to introduce our next speaker who will be talking a little bit more about the investment side of virtual environments in the metaverse. And I will bring the presentation to the center of the stage.
Matheus, I just updated a few things, so you can just...
Are you going to share your screen?
Hold on, I got kicked out. Let me come up there.
Matheus, I have a question for you in the meantime.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm logged in both on my computer and on my Oculus, and I'm doing this funny little, what I call the metaverse limbo, where I'm like, moving my avatar in my Oculus, but also taking my headset off to look at my computer screen. What do you think is better? Should I just stick with the computer or the Oculus?
It's really up to you. I think in this environment, you can present well with the computer.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm not demonstrating any procedures right now, so that makes sense.
You're looking good on my end. I have a straight shot.
All right. All right, everyone, I would like to introduce the next speaker, Thisal Jayasuriya, and he will be speaking about Metaverse, what the numbers tell us. And for those that don't know, Thisal, he is formally trained in neurology as well, but he has taken a route through venture investing and owning different companies. So I'd like to introduce Thisal. Thank you, Thisal, for being here with us, and take it away.
Yes, let me first figure out how I share the screen. Where is, okay, let me, this. Can you guys see my screen or no?
Yes, I can see it, but you can click on present mode.
Yeah.
Because you're sharing the view of the stage.
Oh, on my computer, it's okay. Hold on. Matheus, can you just download the PDF and I'll just go next slide and then you do it? Does that work?
There's a PDF here on the stage.
Is this the, okay. Let me go to the first slide. Oh, okay, cool. Let me go here. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you for coming to this Digital Futures event. So my name is Thisal Jayasuriya, and just a disclosure, anything that I say on this presentation is not financial advice. This is kind of my opinion and for entertainment and educational purposes only, just in disclosure. So I'm going to talk about today, like the metaverse and what the numbers tell us in an investor's point of view. Full disclosure, I am a equity investor in Sunken Blimp, so that's kind of what I do. I've been in the startup industry since like 2015, 2016. We've done about 24 deals on our firm right now on equity side, and then on the public market side, we have hundreds of deals that we've done. So pretty kind of worse in success and failures. But let's just go in, right? So the idea here is the overarching purpose of this is basically to kind of like understand, like, does Metaverse financially make sense to invest? And how can we kind of connect the dots and position ourselves in a way that we can kind of like benefit from it? So, all right, first slide. So before we go to the Metaverse, I want to talk about the .com bubble. And everybody pretty much knows the .com bubble was basically a race that happened in the 1990s, late 1990s. Basically, all the companies understood there's a technology called the internet, and then this technology has the potential to change the world. And every company, including venture companies, started pouring money into this technology, and it created a market bubble, right? At the end, by 1999, there were about 2,000 internet companies that is listed on the public markets. And then, but the majority of them did not actually serve any purpose. It was just pets.com or whatever.com. So just because they had a .com at the end of their company, just because they had a website, they were able to raise money. Soon the markets realized that this is a big hoax. There was actually no purpose to these things, and the entire bubble crashed. By the 2000s, mid 2000s, only 40 companies survived. So from out of 2000, only 40 survived towards the mid 2000s. Basically, the market wiped out 98% of the companies. But the internet, the technology of internet really didn't go anywhere, right? We have Facebook, we have the Web 2 was developed, and the technology was moved forward. What happened was a market correction. In any new technology, money flows into that technology, company starts building. And if the company really doesn't produce anything, it doesn't make any sense. So it will crash. So to give another example, these are few of the companies: Yahoo, AOL, Google, Amazon, Netscape. Even from this slide, only Google survived, Amazon survived, Yahoo got sold, right? So, and then this is the total venture capital investments that happened in 1999 to 2000. Like, you could really see billions of dollars being poured into companies, right? So, and then the entire crash happens, and then basically the valuations goes down. So why venture capital tells us something, right? Venture capital basically is a machine that is designed to explore and create new avenues of the economy and create profits. So it's an explorational tool in the financial universe, but the end goal is to create profits. So if you kind of follow the money, where smart money is allocating their funds, you can get a sense of where we are going. So basically, I just put this slide. What is venture capital? This is my definition of venture capital, right? Venture capital allows a founder or a company to run an experiment against an hypothesis that is observable, measurable, that the true answer dramatically changes the enterprise value of the company. Meaning, I'll take an example of Sunken Blimp, right? So Sunken Blimp has a thesis, and then they're running an experiments against it. But if they get that thesis correct, it'll dramatically increase the value of the company and the income and the profits. So it's basically, venture is basically using money or capital to create efficiencies, to create value over time. That's basically what it comes down to. So let's look at venture experiments that change the world. And we're going to tie everything to the metaverse. But let's look at some experiments that change the world. So first one, Apple iPhone. So the iPhone was developed during 2004-2007 period, research and development. It cost us $3.6 billion in today's money. This is inflation adjusted. If Apple spent $3.6 billion designing the iPhone, right? And it completely changed the world. It completely changed the world in terms of how we communicated. Right now, 5 billion people uses an iPhone for communication. It has an app store. It has its own economy, apps, in-app purchases, Apple Pay, all these social media platforms. The on-ramp to all this is Apple, right? It completely changed that. The next example, the Manhattan Project. It happened 1939 to 1945. We developed an atomic bomb. It cost us, in today's money, $23 billion. Basically, we injected $23 billion, and then we got an atomic bomb on the other side. But it not only changed the world in terms of pushing it to an atomic age, but it actually helped us create a nuclear energy. We fully understood what plutonium-238 was. And now even the space station is basically funded, but basically run on energy by nuclear power using plutonium. And then we have, after that, so let's look at Meta. This is a very interesting investment. Meta's $1 trillion bet. In the last 2 years, Meta has spent about $25 billion in reality labs. That's their virtual reality labs. And they will spend the same amount of money in the upcoming years and sustain it. Reality labs would have spent $250 billion on the metaverse in the 10-year time frame. To give context, this is the largest capital allocation program in the capitalism history. No one has gone all out on an investment like this. To compare it, I've made a little graph adjusted to today. So this is the multi-year spending programs that I gave some examples. The iPhone, it cost us $3.6 billion to create. The Manhattan Project, it cost us $23 billion. Tesla, from start to bringing it to market, it cost us $25 billion. Google, from inception to profitability, it only cost us $40 billion. To comparison, for the only thing that I could find in history that spent $250 billion, meaning $250 billion, is basically the Apollo program that happened in a span of 13 years, right? And basically, this is an investment that is done by a private company in the metaverse that is equivalent to the entire Apollo program. So now it is if the Apollo program changed the world and took us to the moon, brought a space age, created microwaves, created all these medical technologies. If a company collectively injects $250 billion into an industry, it doesn't matter if the company itself will survive, it'll push that industry out. It will basically revive the industry. So, but we don't know where it's going to head, right? So let's look at some market values of the metaverse. So the metaverse right now, 58 million people, roughly 17%, are expected to have used VR at least once per month in 2021. 93 million people, roughly 28% of the US population, are expected to have used AR. A record number of people are playing video games, and the VR or the metaverse technology basically allows more people on a single setting. It could host more people than a Zoom meeting at 100 of X times. So basically, we have an underlying thesis, underlying numbers that supports this 250 $250 billion investment, right? So let's look at what's happening, right? So the world, the innovation platforms that would drive the next decade mainly would be AI, metaverse, blockchain, digital wallets, DNA, and you could see this, and it'll grow from 14 trillion to $210 trillion over the next 10 years. So metaverse and blockchain is part of this huge kind of economy. So we don't actually know if this all would play out, right? So as a person, this is all good, like somebody's telling all these numbers, but like fundamentally, how do I know that this would play out? Or how would I be part of this? So how to invest the unknown? This is my thesis. Basically, you need to have your own thesis, meaning like have your own thesis. Write it down or say, okay, this is why I think this will work. And then have signposts, right? What does that mean? Meaning that if your thesis is correct, these things should happen in the industry, right? For example, if Spatial as an organization where we are doing this metaverse presentation is increasing their value, more and more people should use their services. Number of people in the metaverse should go up. Number of businesses in the metaverse should go up. Again, these are general signposts, but you can have specific signposts. Every time you pass a signpost, you should check it off. And if the prediction that you made didn't happen, you should stop and ask why. Why did this not happen? What's fundamentally going wrong? Is the industry moving towards somewhere else, right? And then have if then that logic, meaning if this happens, I am right. If that happens, I am wrong. And how can I course correct it, right? What matters? What matters in an investment? In my opinion, right? Typically, if you do a lot of deals, right? 10% of your deals would give you 50% of your income, right? So typically what matters is the size of the market, the defensibility of the business model, and the quality and the capability of the team. These are the three things that you should, in my opinion, look when you're investing in something, right? So the size of the market, we kind of know it. We already know it's going to be $24 trillion. It's already $21 trillion. The defensibility of the business model, right? So there's Meta, there's Spatial, there's all these business models that are in it, right? And quality of the team. So who's in the team? I'll tell you, I take Sunken Blimp as another example for quality of the team. Is Sunken Blimp's team is designers, architects, financial analysts, engineers. There's a huge eclectic team that goes into it. It's not shifted towards one narrative. So they could do a lot of things. So my investment thesis on this, right? This is my investment. I think what differentiates humans from all other species on Earth is the ability to communicate and tell stories. We are telling a narrative about something that doesn't really exist. By telling that narrative, you can create collective belief in something. And that collective belief drives behavior change and action in the world. Religion, government, money, art, all these are narrative driven. For example, if you go to an art dealer and if he says this art piece is done by this artist, if his last art piece sold for $10 million, if the narrative is sold, you will pay a lump sum amount of money to get into that art or that business. It's all about narratives. And I think fundamentally the metaverse will change the way humans tell stories, and it will give a new layer to our narratives. And that's where I believe that the value of the metaverse is, because it will make things more personable. It will bring things more closer to people. It can, in medicine, it can bring patients to the doctor, consults, different things. So that's my overarching thesis. Closing remarks, I think this is the time to build, explore, and I don't think you should be afraid of the unknown. That's it. And I think this is like the presentation I gave was like an overall kind of a thesis on the metaverse, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you guys have on specifics, and going into different investments, how to even like, how do you even start a company, whatever. So thank you very much, guys.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Thisal, for the presentation. So it's very insightful. And then, of course, we're going to have an open conversation at the end, and anyone can ask questions and interact in this open conversation. And then moving on to the next presentation, I would like to introduce Dr. James Ghattas to come to the stage. And for those that don't know, Dr. James Ghattas was born in Marietta, Georgia, and he grew up on the lake surrounded by acres of wood. Family is from Alexandria, Egypt, which makes him the first generation American, much like many of his colleagues. James went to high school and swam competitive in U.S. Swimming Fort Lauderdale. He got his bachelor's degree in microbiology at the University of Florida in Gainesville. And he spent a year researching botulinum toxin for the treatment of post-stroke spasticity before getting his medical degree at the Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine. Osteopathic. Oh my God, I'm butchering every single name. Where he forged his passion for neurology. He then joined the University of South Florida, where he completed his residency in adult neurology and subsequently completed a fellowship in interventional pain management. He is a further subspecializing in generative medicine by joining the Regenix Sentinus Schultz Intervention Orthopedics Fellowship in Denver, Colorado. Thank you very much, Dr. James, for being here with us. And I'll bring your presentation down, and then yeah, that will be yours. So take it away.
Thank you, Matheus. I appreciate that. So first of all, I just want to really stress just how grateful I am, not only to be here on this talk, with Digital Futures, but to just find myself in this environment, in the metaverse here, with a cleanly shaved head and a suit in VR. I think this guy's a lot flattering than what I actually look, so I'm grateful for that. But really, I just want to thank the people who I've met, who have kind of introduced me to this field and has let my kind of creative mind grow into this realm. I'm very, very grateful for that. So today, I want to talk about an initiative that we've had called Invirtuo. And it basically is another way to bridge the reality and metaverse in the realm of medical education. And I could talk a little bit about, how I got here, how this idea came about, what we're doing with it, and then what are some ideas and some visions we have. So this is a very flattering picture of me. I look like that. And this is my description here, which Matheus pretty much outlined already. I am a board-certified adult neurologist. I have a subspecialty board certification in interventional pain management, and I will be pursuing an additional training in regenerative orthobiologics, which is basically using our own human tissue, like platelet-rich plasma and stem cells and bone marrow, to treat painful conditions. This is actually, he's not here right now, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention him. My colleague, Dr. Mohammed Omar, who's certified in anesthesiology, and we attended the same interventional pain fellowship program together. So essentially, what I want to do is kind of start by establishing a framework of medical education, at least in the United States. Then we'll kind of hone in on my and Dr. Omar's specialty specifically as a way to kind of illustrate how we came up with these ideas. So typically I would ask, if there's anyone here who is in the medical field, but I think I'm the only one here, well, with the exception of Thisal. But basically, becoming a doctor involves, you get your high school diploma, and then you go to 4 years of, 4 years of undergraduate school. And then from there, you apply to medical schools and hope that you get in. In medical school, that's 4 years where it's split up in 2 years of didactic training where it's all, lecture-based and so on. And then we all take these step 1 and 2 board exams. Then from there, you go on to do your clinical rotations for 2 years where you really get hands-on experience with, clinic, hospital-based medicine, patient care, radiology, things like that. And then from there, you go through this very rigorous matching process to match into a residency program. And from there, that's where you have to decide ultimately what kind of medicine you want to do. It kind of sets you down this life path of, are you going to be a primary care doctor? Are you going to be a radiologist, a surgeon, a neurologist, and so on. That can be anywhere from 3 to 7 years. 7 years being a neurosurgeon, who I believe are like the rock stars of medicine. But 7 years is a long time, so that is a lot of intense training. Let me skip. My avatar is kind of acting a little bit funny right now. Give me just a second. Let me turn around. There we go. So once you finish your residency, then you have the option to either just immediately go out into practice and conduct whatever general specialty it may be, or from there you can subspecialize even further, which has become increasingly popular these days. Most people don't really go into the general practice of their field. Then after that, you basically, now you learn the other part of medicine that no one teaches you, and that's the business of medicine. And you kind of have to learn that on your own. And you have to maintain your certifications and accreditations and so on, all while you're, seeing patients and doing your clinical duties. What I want to talk about briefly is just, what is interventional pain management? Because I'll use this to exemplify how we came up with this idea. Interventional pain management essentially is a targeted treatment approach to people who have chronic pain. And chronic pain is any sort of pain syndrome that has lasted longer than 6 months, essentially. And that has a lot of economic and social and psychosocial impacts. Back pain in the United States is the most common cause for filing disability. It costs the, multiple different sectors of the economy money. It costs the medical sector, a tremendous amount of money. I don't know those numbers off the top of my head, but they're in the order of billions. And traditionally, there hasn't really been much emphasis in medical training and in practice of how to appropriately treat pain. And oftentimes it's just kind of overlooked or shrugged, or even worse, recently in the last 10 years, has been just covered up with opiate medications, which, as many of you know, we are on the tail end of an opiate epidemic that was exacerbated by COVID too, just to make matters worse. So interventional pain management serves to, develop a multimodal approach to treating someone's pain. And that is, addressing the problem at hand, finding out the diagnosis, figuring out what are the psychosocial aspects that contribute to pain. What are some physical interventions we can have, like physical therapy and massage therapy, chiropractic, acupuncture, things like that? What medications can we use to help the problem? And then ultimately, do we need to intervene by means of either injection therapies or surgery or neuromodulation, things like spinal cord stimulators and so on? Ultimately, the goal is not to treat someone's pain, because pain is subjective, but it is to help them restore some sort of reasonable quality of life and get their function back. So the current learning format, when someone goes into pain management, basically you're taking your background of medical knowledge with you, but now you're adding this new skill of how to, approach it and treat these pain problems. And a big component of it is figuring out how to interpret radiographic images like live X-rays. And from there, decipher, what is wrong, and how to direct a needle or a catheter or a electrode into that area based off just of these kind of flat two-dimensional X-ray images. And a lot of times, it's a little bit difficult to kind of relay that information. So traditionally, you have classrooms and there's some sort of PowerPoint presentation. I chose this PowerPoint presentation because this is like one of the first things that you learn in pain management fellowship is you learn chronic low back pain. You go through all the different kind of targeted treatment options, and then now you have to interpret the anatomy. And so if you look at this picture on the right that says medial brain flux, you have this very rudimentary illustration of a short segment of the lumbar spine, the bottom of your spine. Next to it, you have a picture of what it might look like on an X-ray, and then maybe a plastic model with an arrow pointing at it, like saying, hey, this is the nerve that you need to block. And maybe 30 minutes after looking at this picture, you find yourself in the procedure room with an actual patient laying on the table, looking at an actual X-ray that usually does not look nearly as pretty as it does in a textbook. And now you have to direct a needle into this person. So you can imagine there's kind of this big knowledge gap there. And really, it's like a visuospatial processing gap. So, Q and Virtuo. At the time, me being close friends with Thisal and Matheus, I was watching Sunken Blimp evolve into this kind of metaverse design firm. And I thought, there's something to be said here. We have to collaborate. And so we got together and basically just figured, well, let's see if we can render some models. Let's see if we can render some imaging. And let's see if we can't demonstrate a procedure in the metaverse. And in March of 2022, we were able to do that. We hosted a talk called MetaSyn, which was, just like a play on words. And we were able to kind of show how you can take something like a spine model, which is floating right next to me, and an X-ray, and have them, rendered very similarly, and demonstrate a procedure there and bridge that kind of visuospatial processing gap in someone's mind. What we have here actually is a picture of one of my patients who will remain anonymous, but essentially, I'm looking at two different angles of his lumbar spine. And, even though I've looked at anatomy textbooks for years and years and years, it takes a long time for you to kind of wrap your mind around what's happening here, considering all the other factors that you can't see in this picture. Like you can't see skin, fascia, muscle, nerve. You don't know where the blood vessels are. You kind of have to just have that stored in your mind. So by using the, metaverse and kind of this limitless design capacity we have in the metaverse, you could at least render these things and move them in live time and help people understand this better without having to, practice on a real person. Let's see here. So what does it all mean? Basically, it all comes together. What we're trying to do is we're trying to streamline what I call the medical Big Mac. And the medical Big Mac is this sandwich that is made out of multiple layers of knowledge and cognition. You need knowledge of the anatomy. You need knowledge of the pathology and how everything can go wrong. You need to understand, the variance, the interpersonal variance between all these different conditions. You have to have, you have to think about your treatment plan, all the complications. What are some downstream effects, risk and benefit analysis of any sort of treatment you're doing. Then on top of that, you have to have, psychomotor training. You have to know how to actually do the procedure, how to guide a needle somewhere, how to, make the right kind of incision, how to guide a catheter or an electrical lead into the right area and make sure you're not doing any damage. And then you have to manage all those things down the road and make sure that, you can't just treat somebody and then say bye. I mean, now you're married to this person for a long time. So all that together, I call that the medical Big Mac. So I thought, why don't we utilize this kind of unrestricted realm in the metaverse to streamline that process? I had a lot of, initially I would ask myself, and then people would ask me, how does this make anything easier? It might actually complicate things. Not everyone has headsets. How can you replace the physical exam? How can you replace the cadaver labs and so on? But I think that solution, and not to sound lazy, but I think that solution will kind of resolve itself with time. I think that the technology surrounding the metaverse, as Thisal exemplified, is already having a foundation laid, and it is advancing at an incredibly rapid rate. I mean, I just was looking at the new MetaQuest headset that came out just a few weeks ago, and I mean, it has incredible bio-tracking skills, bio-tracking skills. It can measure, pupil diameter, eye movements, facial expression, skin temperature. So you can really extract a lot of information, much in the same way that our own nervous system does. So it's pretty amazing. We're like developing a whole new nervous system. So here I have I don't think this video is going to play for me. I think I may have, Matheus, I think I downloaded or uploaded this video onto the stage up by the model there, but it's okay. No worries. All right. So what is our vision essentially with this? I mean, so far, we've had every week on this in virtual forum that we've created, which there's a model of it up on the stage. We've had every week we've invited new guests in a kind of a TED Talks fashion, different physicians from different specialties with some sort of hallmark paper or hallmark research to come and talk about what either basic pain management things or what are some advancing or new fields in pain management and so on. We have a couple different goals, and I think that InVirtuo is really unique in that it's not really defined. There's no end game to InVirtuo. We're this kind of nebulous being that we're going to reach our tentacles out and see where the metaverse takes us. And we have a couple ideas so far. I mean, on one hand, we want to be a medical education platform where we can regularly invite people to come give educational talks and so on about whatever their specialty may be, or present new research, new data. We want it to be a forum for discussion, a forum for debate. It's open to the public. People can come, log on whenever they want, invite their friends, hold a discussion there anywhere in the world at any time. It could be a venue for conferences, seminars. There's these big summits that every different medical foundation hosts every year that people have to, fly to and take time out of their day and cancel their clinic to go, fly to Las Vegas to go sit through a conference. Or they can put their headset on and attend a conference that is global right there. The other thing you could do is, you can host continuing medical education seminars that, that's actually a way to make this profitable, is that you can charge for these, board certified required accreditation lectures. Something that has piqued my interest is two things: is being able to do formal procedural training in order to train doctors how to do certain injections, certain surgeries, neuromodulation, things like that, entirely in VR, so that by the time that they are either in front of a cadaver or in front of a patient, that they'll at least have developed some psychomotor skills and be familiar with the process, so you're not sitting there, kind of guessing and analyzing on the spot. The other, which I think is the holy grail for this, is being able to host actual medical consultations in the metaverse. I think we've already started to see this happen pre-COVID, there was teleneurology, there was, telepsychiatry, things like that, but they were very slow to start and there was a lot of skepticism. COVID just, catapulted that into reality. And in a matter of a few months, every single medical platform had some sort of tele capability. And I'm pretty sure that that's here to stay. So why not take it to the next level? And I think that as the population ages and as technology advances, I think the aging population that are now Gen Z, Gen Alpha will be a lot more comfortable with seeing their physician in the metaverse, let's say for psychotherapy or a psychiatric advice, or even something as simple as just your annual physical. Let's see. Essentially, we don't want to replace medicine, but we certainly think that we can supplement it. I was actually speaking to one of my mentors the other day who was a strong proponent for a universal centralized medical school, meaning that, you don't necessarily have to go to a different community or a different environment and be subject to what resources one school has over the other, but rather everyone can attend one medical school so that there will be this kind of universal expectation of training so that there's not so much variability, versus, hey, am I seeing a doctor in a rural area where I don't know if the care is going to be so good, or am I seeing a doctor in New England where, the care will be good? So it really, there's a lot of avenues for potential here. Let's see here. I think that's it there. So I wanted to just kind of play this video here. Let's see if I can expand it a little bit. Oh, too big. There we go. Done. And this is just some clips from, so right here, we can see that we've linked this spine model up to an X-ray. Here's one of our speakers, demonstrating a epidural steroid injection. That what you're looking at in the middle there is actually 2 segments of the lumbar spine. It's, L4 and L5 lumbar vertebrae with the, these yellow things are the nerves coming out of the sides there. That's me kind of blowing it up a little bit more there. And so that's just an example of, how to make these complex, anatomical structures, just how to make it easier for you to process. This is one of our colleagues, Dr. Jaha, he's demonstrating myofascial trigger point injections, something that we commonly do in clinic on a daily basis. Same thing there. Let's see. And this is our in virtual forum that Matheus has so graciously designed for us, which I just think is beautiful. But there's many adaptations to this. So you have a wide open space here where you can host, seminars and conferences. There's this lecture forum here where people can sit and attend and watch a lecture. We have all these different models here. We have, sponsored models, sponsored events, and things like that. Oh yeah, here we go. So actually, this is what Matheus just brought here is a rendering of the space itself. I'm getting a little bit crowded out here. Okay, all right. So if you guys come in here and take a look, this in virtual form is like, I'm still very like my mind blown every time I kind of hang out and walk around inside here. But it's very dynamic. Actually, Matheus, if you want to kind of chime in on kind of your thought process when you were designing this, that would be amazing because you are a lot more articulated with that. But basically, you have this kind of sky rim around here. So you have observers who can watch in like a medical lecture hall. There are breakout rooms on the sides where you can have small one-on-one discussions or Q&A panels. You can even have, little, training, individual training sessions in these little breakout rooms. Of course, you have the main stage and auditorium up front where we host these different talks. So yeah, it's quite incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I'd like to mention is that from the very description of what was needed for a space is a combination of lecture hall, private conversations, but also having a very very large volumetric space. So medical models could be scaled up to the point of almost entering a vertebrate, right? So we can explain something either from a 1-to-1 scale or showcase something that is very large to showcase very detailed type of medical models and anatomical, different procedures, etc. So that was, all of those different elements coming together to formulate like the overall space that you guys see here.
Yeah, thank you, Matheus. Thank you. And I think that the takeaway from all this is that this is an idea that is just now starting to be entertained in the world of medicine. I mean, medical education, I don't think there really has been much. I mean, there's been plenty of advancements in medicine, but not really any advancements in medical education, at least since the advent of PowerPoint. And so I think this is an incredible opportunity that's kind of fallen into my lap to be able to, explore this new realm. And no one's setting any rules. There's no guidelines here yet. We're kind of figuring that all out on our own. And I think there's the potential to really change how we approach medicine, how we approach diagnostics and treatment, and how we approach educating the patients and our colleagues. And I only think that while maybe it seems rudimentary now, I think the technology is going to outpace how fast we can innovate. And so it's really going to be limitless. I'm really excited to see what medical school will look like in the next 10 to 15 years. But yeah, so just to wrap it up, if anyone's interested, we tend to have medical talks on our In Virtual forum every Thursday at 7 p.m. Just find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, all your typical outlets, and feel free to join. It's free and open to the public. And thank you again, Dr. Leach. Thank you, Matheus, Digital Futures. I appreciate you guys having me on stage today.
All right. Thank you very much, James, for the beautiful presentation and showcasing, what's been going on in virtual. And then for our next presenter, I would like to bring to the stage Kuba, who's here with us. And for those that don't know, allow me to introduce Kuba real quick. I'm just moving some of these medical elements here. All right. So Kuba is an architect and artist, artist, and educator, exploring the relationship between physical and digital worlds. He is one of the earliest adopters of virtual reality as a creative tool, using it to design his metaverse spaces and introducing students of various universities to the topic of XR and Web3. So thank you very much, Kuba, for being here with us. And, the presentation is yours. Take it away.
Hey guys. I'm Kuba. I hope you can hear me well. Is that the case?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly.
Oh, nice. I'm so honored to be part of this. This is one of my favorite spaces on Spatial, so I'm so glad I can be here. For my presentation, I prepared a little. Well, first of all, I also wanted to give mad props to what just happened here. The previous presenters shared some amazing stuff, and also super relevant, super important, and super serious matters. My presentation will be much less serious. Let's just cool down after all this amazing content and just have some entertainment. I prepared this little corner here on the right of the main stage, and I have there a lot of videos that are complementary to the presentation and some models. So I propose that we all move to the corner on the right, where you can see a huge photo of my face, and we can have a little session over there. So I invite everyone to move a little bit your virtual bodies and have a little stroll to this section. I have the presentation here. And I hope you guys can see the slides. Can you let me know if that's visible?
I see the slides, but I see a white page on my end.
That's very annoying. And now if I switch the slides, is it refresh? Is it refreshing?
I still see white from my end.
Okay, that's not great because I can see the slides. Matheus, you have the best experience. What's the best idea to load it again? What would you say?
Yeah, are you in VR?
I am in VR, yes.
Okay. What I can do is you share the presentation with me, so I can share my screen.
Yeah, I did send you the link. I don't know if you get it.
Yep.
Okay, then I leave this one here. Just let me know when you.
Absolutely.
Oh, that works better. Okay. Yes. You can maybe just cover my or I can actually move it, right?
Perfect. Yes.
Okay. So once again, I'm Kuba Jekie, yeah, I come from architecture, and a while ago decided to make a step into focusing more about virtual designs. And what this presentation is about, is connecting the world of the metaverse with virtual reality. And usually, this connection talks about the virtual reality as tool to display the metaverse. Which is not always the case, right? We're right now, and many of us are just without using a VR headset, still participating on mobile devices and laptops. So the VR doesn't have to be an obligatory part of the equation presenting metaverse, but it can be a tool for creating the metaverse. And I feel I find it extremely interesting because first of all, I was for years working on my computer with mouse and keyboard, and I became bored with this interface, and I was just craving to move into something that is more connecting sketching and modeling at the same time. But I also find it the shortest translation between creation and the display if both of these things happen in VR, or at least the first part happens in one-to-one scale and then is being presented to people. So if we can go to the next slide. The first part of my work and the theme of this presentation is the metaverse architecture, and you have one of the examples here. So something that was really designed to be just like this stage, and more stuff of Sunken Blimp fully virtual, but also everything that you'll see in this presentation was designed in virtual reality with the tool called Gravity Sketch that I'm a complete fan of, that is developing immensely. So this is all what you see, and all the models that you see around, and all the videos, and what we do with the students. It's all designed in virtual reality. And if you go to the next slide, this shows a bad photo of the video that I can actually want to show you. So I'll bring it here. So the process of designing in virtual reality goes a bit like this. So we're really using the body to stretch things, to add things, to all the modeling happens using your limbs and not just few muscles in your hand, right? So I enjoy it nowadays, especially considering how mobile the VR devices are. You just with the Meta Quest 2 or 1, doesn't matter. You can put it in your backpack, find any space. The bigger the better, because then you can really walk around your designs and design it while exploring at the same time, and be free. And I've been taking it nowadays also on my vacation. Right now I'm on the move and I took my headset. So the VR also made a big step of being a heavy duty thing that you have to connect to your PC to really a pocket mobile device that you can use as your pocket atelier, or really. So one of the first examples that I was like, oh, this video actually works here. This is crazy. Okay, well, of course you're sharing your screen, so we can do it much better now when I realized. So let's go to the next slide. So yeah, this is what my my work consists of. There's two elements to it. Did I just lock it? There's two elements to it. There is the design part, and that's the metaverse and VR world building and concept creation. We're on a very early stage of the metaverse, so a big part of it is also figuring out why are we doing it, what are we doing, how are we gonna do that, who are we addressing with it. So the concept part is actually pretty big. I'm collaborating as a freelancer with many different organizations, studios, metaverse platforms, NFT marketplaces, or clients, also big ones like ING or ADE, Amsterdam Dance Event, that disappeared, or am I crazy? And the second part of what I do is education, working usually with architectural institutions like the Architecture Academy in Amsterdam or Architecture Academy in Tilburg, both in the Netherlands, but also with Academy of Arts in Amsterdam in general, or Architecture Center also in Amsterdam. So a lot of local collaborations to introduce this young generation of architects, designers to this topic. So it's not open the black box in front of them, show them how it works, and allow them, push them to rediscover it by themselves and to really define what is it for and how it works and what do they want to do with it on their own, because the VR is very present in architectural business by now, I feel, but it's treated purely as a display tool. 99% of the cases, I feel. So I try to switch it and to push students to learn how to use it in a more active way. And if we go to the next slide, there is the first project that I want to show you. That's a metaverse space designed for Amusing, a platform that connects the artists with potential clients, allow artists of different fields to share their work and to basically share their services. And what we did here was to create this this virtual gallery / performer / presentation place that they can use to exhibit the artists also in the metaverse, which I think is especially relevant if we talk about people that perform dance. So then we can stream real, not a flat image of a dancer, but you can keep it there, Matheus, so we don't have to hide the presentation. That's better. And this is, I think, a typical kind of program for the metaverse, a gallery, a presentation, kind of like what we have here. It's very utilitarian, handy tool to attract people to the metaverse. If we go further, I think we might have a few more shots of the space, how it presents. All the colors represent different artistic fields that I'm using as the platform connects. We can go further, I think. Yeah, this is the main stage where they meet when they present. So it has this pretty epic view over the sea that then, if they're projecting a screen, is being covered so you can focus on what you're watching. We can go a step further, to another project, and that's another stage. But if we go to the next slide, you can see that my favorite part of this project was really the process. So what happened is that we met for the first time in VR, in collab, in Gravity Sketch collab, with an amazing architect and artist called Christian Venables. And we just brought some AI generated images that he co-created with AI, and that I absolutely loved. And we started creating. And when we entered this virtual room, we didn't really have a clear idea what are we gonna do. We kind of spontaneously started getting inspired and collaborate on adding piece by piece to this structure. And only with time, we started finding certain forms more interesting and feeling what kind of functions they could play. And it was a few sessions that we had building it. And in the meantime, there came an opportunity to connect this project. I'll maybe put it up off. To connect this project, we can also go to the next slide on the presentation. To connect this project with Amsterdam Dance Event, a huge festivity that happens every year in Amsterdam, that wanted to digitalize part of their masterclass discussion program, and then bring it into the metaverse. So we had an official partnership with ADE, and we used this design that we co-created with Christian to host there. We can go to the next slide. Very similar to what we're having here, a panel discussion about the use of different uses of AI, and that was also for a launch of another metaverse platform called Ravel. So we adapted this design to facilitate people on this stage, and have a stream also between the physical space where the physical part of the event was happening and the other way around. So one day of this event was purely virtual, but the other one was a hybrid. So people sitting in a physical room could look into the metaverse and see people just like us now, avatars, watching what's happening on the physical stage. So we're looking for this kind of tension of how this hybrid events connecting metaverse and physical space can work. We can go further. And another part of the program that was happening in the Synth Tower, because that's the actual name of the project that I probably didn't mention. Since ADE is Amsterdam Dance Event, is a highly music-oriented event, we wanted to introduce also the music element to the experience. So every stage you can see here on this teleport map different stages. Every stage was actually a spot to premiere a different unreleased song by this artist, Christian the Comet Conqueror. So it became also like a listening party of unreleased songs of his. So instead of clicking the skip song or waiting for another song to happen, you could have almost like a social experience walking around through this tower with your friends and listen to different songs on the album. We can go further. So yeah, these are these different stages rendered here of how you can have different streams playing different songs. Yeah, for example, of one artist or different artists of one label. It was for us one big field for experimentation of what the space in the metaverse for an event can do. What are different applications and how also people react to this kind of ideas that for us are very exciting, but you always have to clash it with the public. We can go further. And also, so now you can hear a screenshot from the website of Metamundo, which is an NFT marketplace. So another application of this project, and you can see it here on the right as well, my right in front of the screen, the model. So this space, this venue was also minted as an NFT in a limited edition of 100 that dropped completely for free for anyone to first come, first serve. So people could take this venue after the event as a souvenir and use it as they want. So for some of them, it's like a first step into the metaverse with their own original piece, not a standard template from another platform. So it's both, I hope, breaks also some of the borders for people to make step into the metaverse. But they also different people started doing crazy things with it. So already like this drop was gone after 1 hour, and already a day later, people started dropping their first renders, playing with the 3D model, then how they dropped it into spatial and how they filled it in with their items. But then also somebody put it in Unreal Engine and made a whole shooter game for it that is going to be available for all the owners, all the holders of the NFT. So it actually created, I think, an amazing thing, an actual game that looks great. And also for the community that was interested in the project, something that brings them together and allows them to have fun in this VR-made structure. We can go further. Yeah, and speaking of spaces being available as NFTs, if it's something that you find interesting and you potentially, if you regret that you weren't there to grab the Synth Tower for free, this is the collection that is now gonna be dropped on the Art Basel in Miami, also via Metamundo. So these 3 pieces from the Hyperspace collection, are gonna be available for grabs. Hopefully not for free this time, but yeah, different kind of vibes connected with the cosmic theme. But one that is more like a hangout space. The other one a very massive theater, and the other one also more presentation space, gallery space. So at the beginning of December, they will be available via Metamundo. And also, if you are interested to look into this, there is the model. You can literally put your head in it and look inside how it looks. And for all 3 spaces, all the 3 models that you can see here, you can click in the portals and teleport there. I don't know how, that's another piece that's for something else that was for a dance performance, VR dance performance with created for Studio Frei and Intradance. Is that a picture or video? That's not loading. So there is also projects that I do that are not per se for the metaverse platforms. They're, for example, VR experiences. But that, yeah, I think it's even stronger than to design them in VR, since they're going to be experienced only in VR later on. So it's worth to hold the whole process from the first sketch to then consultations with the client, with the design team in VR. So when we think something is too big or too small, we just move it and not write it down and do it later. And talk in centimeters, we talk in, how about this or this and that? So I find it very freeing. Another project that I'll quickly show you. I feel I'm not doing great on time, so I'll speed it up. If we can move to another slide. So recently, with a group of VR designers, we just wanted to test the limits of our favorite app, and make a massive collab project. We had around 15 people joining this space at the same time and building the city of the imaginary city of the future together, to stimulate the creativity of everyone and get rid of the excuse, oh, I'm stuck, I don't want to do. We partnered up with OpenAI, the creators of DALL-E, to get us credits, get all of the participants credits to create a lot, and just trust me, just a little fraction of what people generated, amazing stuff for inspiration. So we had AI inspiring and stimulating the process, and then we jumped into Gravity Sketch together, and started building. And in a few hours, we had 2 sessions. One was like a test session just to check if everything works, but immediately everyone started building, and we had another one. So technically in 3.5 hours, we built this massive structure that then we started having fun in rendering, showing images, videos. Somebody made it into a game again. So we didn't break the program. It's possible to design with 15 or even more, probably up to 20 VR designers at once, which for me just highlights this amazing power of this creative tool of just working together real time, completely remotely, with your hands. And now I'll move this to this side so we can jump to the other part, which is the education. And if we go to the next slide, that's still the city. So these are some renders of the future city. Yeah, so I do teach courses that I always create from scratch almost, because the industry of the VR and Metaverse keeps changing. So we always adapt it to the current needs of introducing, as I mentioned, students to these tools. And what is important also for me is that we really question with them, why do they do this? What is the purpose, and how all the VR ideas connect with the real physical world? So, for example, reimagining the future libraries where there's no books, no physical books, no physical CDs or whatever was in the old library. How did the access to information works in the metaverse ready world? And this first project that we did with the students, my first teaching experience ever, was in the complete lockdown, one of the first heavy ones. So first we're really bummed out that we are not able to meet with the students and show them, give them the headsets physically and explain how it works. They all have all the classes, all the work activity on Teams, on the camera. We're going to get rid of this completely. We only meet in the metaverse on Altspace. and we sent them the headsets home. They could use it anytime they wanted, and we were meeting every week with them in different environments. And they create the final results were really amazing. That's this video here. It's 3.5 minutes long, so I'm not gonna show it to you now, but I'm gonna leave it here playing in a loop, so you can, if you're interested, check it out. Here, it ended up also with completely VR Metaverse presentation when we had a tour through all this world. And we had a party which attracted, I don't know, 70 people or so, which in the pandemic times was an amazing result. Totally impossible in the times where you could invite 2 people to your house. So that was pretty fun. We can move to the next slide now. Yeah, so after this class that I just described to you, that was for 7 students, very manageable group, especially working remotely. We were asked to do the class for the whole year of Academy. So that is 50 students, because they're all departments from landscape, urban planning. And we got first scared, and probably if somebody asked me about it now, if I'm gonna do it, I would say it's impossible, but back then we didn't know it's impossible, so we gave it a try. So we divided the 50 students into 3 shifts where they were creating in VR their projects. And then they were, first the first shift was creating the concept, what they actually want to do, then building it in VR. And then the third stage was learning how to use Unity to put it all together and make this individual designs, a collaborative world put together into one. And this one was different pieces of the meta campus. So a metaverse campus for their school, for the different departments, dance, history of art, conservatorium, architecture, all different parts, and they were designing a virtual campus, since they are the spatial designers. So instead of asking a company to do it for them, we asked them to make this first step and design something, how they see it, how would they interpret different fields of art into metaverse, VR, spatial designs. So again, it's a long video, it's 2 minutes, but still too long. I'm gonna head towards the end. With another project. So I'll keep this on the loop. We can move to another slide. Okay, we have Meta Portfolio, something missing here. Yeah, Meta Portfolio was my idea to use the fact that they are the architecture students or spatial designers and not graphic designers. And when they have their portfolios, usually they have to suddenly become graphic designers and make a booklet, a PDF usually, that shows their work. I found it extremely uninspiring. So I pushed them to think what would be a 3D representation of their gallery, their portfolio, a place they can highlight their work in a way that highlights their real talents and real passion. And if we go to the next slide, we had 5 students. It was kind of a boot camp crash course, 4 or 5 days, one after the other. One after another, from zero, all of them never had any VR experience, to creating their own metaverses on a platform called Mona. And they all had very different ideas. From one on the left, that was an urbanist that thought, okay, I had many projects in Amsterdam. So I want people to walk on like a scale model of the city, and when they they approach a certain area, they can see how it's changed after my intervention, and only then you can on those walls of this tube see different panels, traditional panels that he used, but then the main thing is the actual model in front of you. Something that is more cyberpunk, that's a traditional motif in this kind of topics. Really, another one, reinventing classical architecture into making some impossible, no gravity, really thin gestures. Just crazy. And the one on the right that showed like almost a story of going from under the water up and up to the top of the structure, where the latest, most important, their favorite work were presented. And the last one, I promise, is our latest class that was called Virtual Creative Hubs. And this guy, you can recognize, that's me, celebrating the beginning of the class that was happening in this Gravity Sketch designed auditorium. That was our lobby, that was our safe house throughout the entire class. And also at the end, it became a lobby for the different projects of all the students. So the idea was to look at the creative hubs, so spaces, physical spaces, where people come to work creatively, like a maker place, maker space, a hub, and think what a virtual extension of such a place could mean. What is what could be the role of this? And it was a similar story. Maybe I'll put it. I lost it. So again, people that have zero experience going from designing things in VR into making them work on this platform that we are here right now, spatial, and they had all different ideas. One focused on archiving all the projects, usually architecture projects. After the students finish them, disappear in the white void, or black void rather. They wanted to have a virtual archive of all the works of the students of their university. Another one focused on stimulating emotions that then lead to certain creative decisions. The third one wanted to focus on facilitating the process, so meeting with professors, other students, using a metaverse as a process tool. And the last one, connecting the different departments of the school finally in one virtual space where they can all meet, because apparently that was the issue. Even though they were in one building, they would never meet the students from other departments. And in the metaverse, they could finally be faced with the work of all their other colleagues. So we can go to the next slide. So that was representing this video that I just showed you. We can go further. And yeah, I think what was amazing, to wrap it up, what was amazing that we really had an 8-week course with people that never used VR before and didn't really know what this metaverse is. Usually they think, oh, it's something from Mark Zuckerberg, and Mark is evil, therefore we are very hesitant about this. We started with this attitude, going all the way to having them exhibit their work at Dutch Design Week, which is like one of the most major design events in the whole of Europe, and definitely in the Netherlands. And they were, passing their freshly acquired knowledge and passion and hopefully positive emotions to other people of many different ages, kids, senior citizens, and everything what's in between. So that was very important for me and hopefully for them as well. And yeah, that was it from me. I hope I didn't push the time too far. I'm gonna leave all these videos looped here so you can take a look in a less chaotic way than I was showing it. Check out the models. As I said, you can jump into these different spaces with the portals above, after the event. And once again, thank you so much for this opportunity. Digital Futures, Sunken Blimp. That was great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Kuba. And thank you everyone for the presentations, everyone that presented so far today. And then this was our last presentation. And then I would like to actually open up for anyone that has questions, or to open a open discussion actually about any topics that you guys would like to discuss. And we can go back here to the center of the stage for this.
Okay.
Yes, I would love to ask a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I guess, I mean, a lot of the discussion and this kind of, let's say, parallels some of the discussion about AI. You know, is AI going to take over and replace, in a sense, designers or something like that, or is it simply going to generate a new space of opportunity to produce things? You know, so I mean, the comparison was made with photography. Photography didn't completely get rid of paintings, but it created a new art form. And I'm just wondering whether this is going to be a new form of operation, or whether it's going to be replacing something. It seems to me it's got huge potential. I must say, it's really wonderful to hear the presentation about the medical world, and how very much they're kind of echoing what we're trying to do in architecture, and that's astonishing. And it's also fascinating to see how you can. I thought the most interesting thing was the idea of kind of microsurgery. You can just zoom in and blow things up and operate at different scales. And I was thinking that, you know, maybe you could do the opposite. You could zoom out and get a sense of, I don't know, I'm quite sure what you get a sense of, maybe an incoming hurricane or something like that. But it has huge potential, and I could see it. But the question is it going to be generating its own space, or is it going to be overtaking our existing ways of operating? Let me just throw that as a question.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually been thinking a lot about this, right? Because we are looking, of course, Midjourney, DALL-E, all of those. We're tired of even talking about it, right? It's so good and so valuable as an inspiration. But we are looking also at the potential of 3D generators as well, which are here already. And we've been experimenting with some of them, generating, you know, like 3D environments using some of these tools. However, I do see this as a potential really powerful tool. And I think some spaces, right, they could start completely blank. And as you need items, or as you need spaces, you know, even on command, you know, needing space, it goes generating the same way we're using DALL-E. However, I like to see this as they are powerful instruments, but sometimes design, or the architect in this case, becomes the maestro. They can adopt new instruments to the orchestra and completely replace some of the instruments of the past if needed. But if you are just generating and generating and generating, perhaps there are times that you're going to need some sort of harmony between things. And perhaps that's when the role of the architect in this case, which is already completely different than the role of the architect perhaps 15 years ago, is going to change even further, because now you become not a dictator, but a poetry master when it comes to like generating spaces, right? And the fact that anyone could become a poetry master and to generate spaces, you don't need to know the 3D modeling of things. And that's the beauty of it, right? Anyone can come up with beautiful environments and beautiful experiences by being able to maestro this orchestra.
I definitely want to. The question is really. Go ahead.
I guess I was going to add to that by saying, you know, I like this idea of, you know, kind of bridging the microcosm and the macrocosm. Like, I think there's this kind of fundamental difference in design and how nature designs things versus how we design things. I think we design things in the sense that form begets function. Like, you know, an airplane looks the way it does because its function is strictly to fly. And planes will look different based off of what they need to do: carry people, carry things, fly really fast, fly really slow, drop bombs, whatever. Versus in nature, it's kind of like form begets function, and that form takes place based off of these universal kind of rules around it. You know, the rules of entropy, the rules of gravity, the rules of electrochemical gradients and things like that. And because it's happening on such a grand scale, eventually something will take form. And then its function will find whether its function is useful in the world or not, that will determine whether it survives. And that's what I think is very interesting about this, is that we don't really have we don't necessarily know what the function is yet. We're exploring this form. We're exploring its boundaries and its capacities, and we're reaching its tentacles out into this new universe, and something will take hold. And if we find that it's viable, it will continue to grow.
No, I absolutely agree with that. And I think that goes back to the issue that I think Matheus sort of raised in the beginning about the social. You know, how are these things inscribed within the social? How are they adopted? And some things you can predict. We know something. We know what tools are. We also know roughly what's going to happen in the next 3 years in terms of the tools under development right now. But what we don't know is the way in which that's going to be inventively taken up by people and used in different kind of ways. That simply cannot be predicted very easily. And that, I think, is the astonishing thing, is how you start seeing kind of new social practices like this one, like Sunken Blimp, emerging out of a technology that's kind of there, but just open to possible appropriation. So that I see as a fantastic kind of question. But I mean, the heart of my question is to whether it's going to replace things. And I think in some ways there have been instances in history where effectively things have been replaced. I mean, in some senses, since the invention of the internet, the way that we do research, and we search on the internet, which means that anything that is kind of pre-internet, anything from about 1997 and before, it's become like a kind of dark ages. We really can't access it because it's not online. We can't access it. So some things have been paradigm shifts that have really forced us to operate in totally different sort of new ways, and some cases where just new emerging practices have come out. But I must say, I thought your lessons about surgery on this platform were hugely interesting and echoed some of the thoughts that we've had on our own platform about how you could create a kind of global platform for bring everyone together in one single classroom, which is just astonishing. So I guess, I mean, we don't know quite where it's going to go, but it is, for me, fascinating to see people like Matheus just inventively using these technologies to kind of create new forms of social practice, which really open up lots of possibilities.
Awesome. Thank you, Neil.
I mean, I think this one is just from final comments, so I don't want to intervene in because I really want to be a spectator here. But I think the role of the architect, I've often thought is not so necessarily much about sort of putting bricks on bricks, but really designing a better future. And I think what needs to be designed in some way is what it is. Not to be an architect, but how to take the skill set that we have and the technologies available and invent something. I mean, this is genuine architecture in my sense, a genuine design, developing a platform, a space of opportunity. And it's not just the kind of the virtual space, but the way of thinking that goes with it, and not being constrained by previous ways of operating, but seizing the opportunity to explore these possibilities.
Absolutely. And you raises a good question, right? Especially focusing on society, focusing on the public, because in the end, even architecture, you are designing for people, not for yourself. It raises interesting questions about where is society at the moment? And the idea that each group is so different than the other. We are so separated as groups, right? There are niches of people that would appreciate something versus others. So now you can really specifically design something that belongs to a particular group, but another group would potentially hate, but it doesn't matter in this case because now you're housing that community, right? It's not a public building that you have to abide to the laws or the regulations and the architectural code that is generalized for everyone. Now you can do your own community's code for something that belongs to that group, which is something that is good and bad, of course. There's many layers to it. It's not even good or bad. There's just many layers. Because now we're talking about further segregating groups that become even deeper and deeper into their own. Now they're even their space around it. But at the same time, when you're touring these different spaces, when you go space hopping or you want to change your scenery in that sense, meeting this new neighborhood or this new group of people, you're now immersed in the type of building elements that they associated as part of their identity. Now you bring the question of identity even further than just your outfit, your profile image, and your bio on social media. Now you have a spatial relationship to a community. And I think that is so fascinating. One of my favorite books is Codex Seraphinius. And it is, if you guys know about this book, it's just made up by this Italian writer, artist. I don't even know how to put him in a box. He doesn't need a box. But he wrote this book that is a made up biology, science, sociology, everything. It's about this made up universe in a made up language with made up animals and biology and all of that. And there's parts of the book that teach you about the different societies and groups, and each of them have their own outfits and their own architecture. And it's just fascinating to see that this is taking place in today's society. Like this, we are creating made-up worlds, but they relate to specific groups of people and specific needs. And I don't know, in college, in architecture school, I had a lot of professors that looked at this world as this is not real architecture. And then I found Neil Leach, who believed that this is, and in the end, it doesn't need a label necessarily for what it is architecture. We are creating, spaces for society.
And absolutely, and this is a kind of new reality to some extent. So another question. So I'll disappear after this. But I think one of the issues when you get to sort of things like AI is there's a kind of hangover expectation of what it might do. So, for example, let's say robots, which are controlled by AI, we get these, to my mind, ridiculous humanoid robots like Sophia or Ada, this artist. Well, we know that DALL-E and things can produce much better art than Ada can. But why do we have this kind of legacy of holding on to a certain memory of something? So, the question I'm going to go to is at the moment we've got really much a kind of replication of our physical space. We've got gravity. We don't need gravity. We've got gravity. We've got avatars of people, and it's very much the world we're used to. Do you think at any point we're going to break away from that? So we're going to start inventing a new logic which isn't constrained by this pseudo gravity and is opening up in new dimensions?
I will allow other people to respond. I just wanted to touch into this real quick before I open this, but 100%, right? And I do believe it's going to open at some point more, but there's still a need to anchor down somehow. At least my personal, this is very subjective in this case. I like to anchor down somehow, give a sense of scale or a sense of, some relationship back. So it reaches more audiences, right? That's my perspective, because at least in this stage, right, our goal is to bring in people from different industries, different perspectives, people who had never been in a virtual space before and be able to host the presentation or watch a presentation. We're using this as a bridge to bring different industries on board of this world and seek knowledge within the unknown. So in this case, we have two Vasily chairs here on stage. And, some of you guys in design might recognize it. And of course, these are used as a symbol of, elegance and minimalism and money, right? Because they're expensive. And in this case, they were pretty cheap. There's the expensive part of them are actually the poly count, which we use the term expensive, right? Something is expensive in a virtual world is because they have a high poly count. But in this case, I wanted to bring them for scale, and as well as, it's a clear symbol of perhaps we talk about design and perhaps there's some sort of order, right? And ever since we put this element, people don't run into the stage as much. There's some social rules that are unspoken that people started to realize, like, that's clearly the place where people present, and the seats on the audience is clearly where you're supposed to be. So whenever people accidentally run into the stage, you see the despair of like, oh my God, I need to get out of here, you know? And those elements are not necessarily because we miss the real world and we want to do it, but we're still in a phase that we're learning the new social understandings that are unspoken. And these allow us to place these unspoken rules without having signs, please don't walk on stage.
I'd have to add on to that. As you were talking with this, I was curious because, like, I'm wondering if this kind of attachment to our social framework and our biological framework will start to either, I don't know if evolve or dissolve is the right word, because we're all operating off the same operating system, right? We have our central and peripheral nervous system, which in a way was developed, you know, by the rules of nature, by the laws of nature. So it does abide by some rules, but it is also the most incredible piece of machinery at, you know, adapting and deciphering what's real and what's not real and growing and so on. So, you know, us as whatever, young adults, middle-aged adults, however, you know, we're approaching this world with our own kind of construct that we've carried into our lives so far. But think of the upcoming generations. You know, let's take an extreme example. What if you had an infant that was born into the world and his nervous system was subjected strictly to these, you know, virtual constructed world or this AI constructed world? Who knows how that person's brain is going to wire? You know, do they have a concept of gravity? Do they have a concept of up, down, things like that? Our brains adapt incredibly well to these things. I mean, I think about the Aborigine population. You know, when there's no right left amongst the Aborigines. Like when someone says, you know, I'm looking at your right arm or your left arm, to them that is your north facing arm or your south facing arm. Everything in their world is built off of a cardinal direction frame of reference. And as a result, you can ask a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old who's just like been put in some strange environment which way is north, and they'll know. So their brain has adapted incredibly well to this entirely different social construct. You can imagine how hard it would be to play hokey pokey amongst the Aborigines because they're all facing different directions. So it's like the song's not going to work at all. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is I think, you know, our brains will adapt very, very quickly to just letting go of these kind of physical constructs and having the ability to think a lot more freely.
I 100% agree with that. And your question, if that's going to evolve or dissolve, I think it's going to just become more segmented for the fact that we perhaps grew up going to the same type of movie theaters. Therefore, we know how to behave in a movie theater because we've been to similar spaces, because that's just, you know, it was dominated. Not everyone had the amount of money or power to go and build their own version of movie theaters. So the big corporations that made the movie theaters kind of decided that for us. In this case, if all of these children, the next generation, right, are growing, choosing different spaces that have different norms, and iteration after iteration, they start dissolving some of the old ways of creating a space, I think it's just going to get strong within groups. That's my perspective and my kind of prediction. There's going to be different types of space and different understandings, and every group would kind of understand their own way of doing things. I don't think there will be a general rule book for how to behave in a virtual space, because that goes against, you know, the whole purpose of this. I do believe, though, that there's going to be some universal modifications that you can do as a personal preference, right? And I like the conversation about accessibility. We don't have ramps here for ADA. Right? We don't need that, because no one here, even if they are in a wheelchair in real world, they don't need to be in a wheelchair in this space, right? But if I had materials that had flashing strobe lights and someone was sensitive to light, that is something that in accessibility, we still have to think about, right? However, if everyone here is coming to the Sunken Blimp Club and you're down to like party with lights, but you, James, you have sensibility to light, that could be a setting that you personalize. So you experience this virtual space slightly different than everyone else, but it means that that's your personal preferences to environment, and the environment, since it's code, since it's virtual, it can be modified to your preferences, even though we're all sharing the same shell. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's my perspective. I think the social norms can even go to the level of individualism in this case.
That makes absolute sense. I know exactly what you're alluding to. Like, here's an example. In a patient room, if I have a patient who is a migraineur who suffers from migraines, well, I know that patient is particularly sensitive to certain perfumes and colognes. And if 5 people, if a doctor, a resident, and 3 medical students all walk into this patient's room, and one of the medical students is wearing whatever cheap cologne, that patient is subjected to it, whether they like it or not. But in the metaverse, like they can set their environmental preferences to their own desires.
Yeah, precisely.
I mean, I take your point about the social and the kind of semiotic side of things, and I agree that the chair kind of invites you to sit on it, kind of thing, and we never totally leave behind that thing. But there's always this kind of question. I think with social robots, they say, well, we make them human-like to make them socially acceptable, and you can understand that. I guess at some point, with someone like Elon Musk who's developing, I think the name of it now, this the humanoid robot. At some point he's going to ask himself this question about, what do you really achieve by having a humanoid robot with bipedal, with 2 legs, as opposed to on wheels, which would be much cheaper and make much more sense. So I guess that we'll find out. I mean, we're seeing history in the making here for sure, and the way in which these technologies have been taken up are just truly fascinating. So I just want to thank you, Matheus. It's been an amazing session exploring this possibility, and I think we need to kind of push this further and use this platform and really colonize it, inhabit it, and get to do it, and see the affordances of this platform, because it seems to be extraordinary what potentially it could bring to us. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Neil.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We can still hang out here much, or?
Yeah, please go ahead. I didn't want to be a party pooper. I just wanted to not take over the stage. Sorry, but no, please carry on. It's just fascinating. I'm getting lots of comments coming in from people who are just saying what a fascinating session, and I think absolutely. So all over the world we're coming together, which is astonishing.
That is great, and I can't wait to have more sessions of Digital Futures. Perhaps we can, create a Digital Futures stage on board the Digital Futures team. That would be fascinating.
You absolutely, and just one thing, we will just be into the Digital Futures for a competition which has been shortlisted, which is good news. But one of the questions they ask is your model scalable? And I'm not quite sure what they meant by scalable, but But our response was absolutely. We're doing it for architects, and architects were just focusing on mainly technology, but there are other forms of architecture and there are other disciplines. So it's really great to see James doing his stuff with his medical colleagues on here, because it is a scalable model that could really operate for every single sort of discipline. It's absolutely fascinating. And I don't know, having been myself subject to an operation, which I wasn't even subject to because I was unconscious under anesthetic, but it was done robotically, and the surgeon was one end of the room and I was the other end of the room. And I wish I'd been able to witness it. But I think it's just, to me, it's super interesting to think of how surgeons could operate with this. And I'm still blown away by the idea of microsurgery, of kind of climbing inside someone and really being able to be very precise in what you're doing. So it's fantastic. So a great session. We'll have to do more.
Thank you so much, everybody.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. That was amazing.
Matheus.
Well, I just think, I will just mention as we're coming to an end, it's probably good to keep things fairly tight, but this has been mind-blowing. We'll do it again for sure. But just to mention that tomorrow we have another session on Digital Futures that is going to be about AI and how the Office of the Future is going to be operating. I mean, what is the back of my mind after seeing this is whether the Office of the Future, to what extent it's going to depend on this, to what extent we're going to hold our meetings in here and the kind of collaborations with clients and things, and even explaining to the client the way that you might sort of begin to navigate this. Because what has fascinated me more than anything else is how the younger generation has seized upon these tools and are kind of using AR devices, using VR devices, and incorporating them in practice and incorporate them with other tools. So there's been this kind of hybrid form of hybrid practice developing, and it's to my mind fascinating. So let's see what it's going to lead to. But thank you so much for the session, Matheus. I think it's the beginning of something very special. It's obvious in many ways. So maybe we can just wrap up at this point. But so Matheus, over to you over to you.
Sorry, I just need just one advice for anyone who's building. If you're building in the metaverse, like if you're an architect or a designer, get your IP from whoever you're building. Like that's going to worth so much in the future. Make sure that you have intellectual property rights or whatever you're doing. That's from a financial point of view, but that's it.
Actually, there is just one final comment. There's some questions in the chat. I don't know if Matheus, do you want to respond to those questions that came in from YouTube?
All right. Which questions?
There's from a guy called Evan Ozoldash. Sounds very Turkish. Can you see them on your thing and on the Zoom?
Yes. Yeah. I see one of the questions. For me, biggest problem I observed so far, most metaverse ideas ignore some aesthetics, nature, and body and mind connection. I have some opinions. My 30s. Blending, offering seamless experience. That's actually really interesting, because we had a presentation here in the topic of biophilia by this one person called Bill Browning, and he actually toured us through different projects from Frank Lloyd Wright, which was pretty fascinating. And within the Frank Lloyd Wright places, he actually showcased a couple of elements of biophilia, which were pretty interesting. Even the sound of water, how it relates to, in nature, if you find a stream of water, that represents life, because that's clean water that you can drink. Therefore, our brains were just wired to understand that the flow of water means safety, means life. Or the sound of birds, whenever there's a predator around and birds are not singing. Therefore, hearing sounds of birds, our brain interprets that as there's no predators around, you're feeling safe. And those are all things that goes back to like caveman human beings. However, there's still some research and science that proves that those do make you calmer, those do relieve stress, connection to nature, visual connection to nature. And we've been incorporating some of these type of elements, even like simulating wood and trees, which is clearly virtual. But we see a change in how we, especially the team and I who participate and stay on these spaces for hours, the softer lights with the nature in it, seeing the stingray moving around, like some movement in the space, that made such a big difference in how we stayed in the space. Like I used to get tired, like drained after spending a lot of time in this blue, colorful environment. And, we're starting to analyze that a lot of the elements that we bring into healthy architecture and all of that, they do have a ground of truth in the virtual environment as well. Even if it's temporary, it's because we're getting new to this environment, but I'm not sure. They just seem to work so far. Anyone has comments on that?
Down on the thing, I think the third one, just scroll down a bit, the same guy. Same guy. Can you see it?
I wonder how digital-physical relationship will impact the value of household.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of cross-generational relationship and inheriting properties generation to gene. Wow. Big question. How these will impact the value of household. I think it's interesting to think, if you think about the value of household right now, how we associate technology, right? There's already some disruptance in terms of technology from like grandma, mom, son, how we use technology. And I am not 100% sure how that will impact household. I think it really depends on the different type of household itself. But I am not sure. This got me thinking now.
Does he mean value of the financial value of it, or value as in a whole?
I interpret it as the relationship, like the cross generation relationship, right?
Yeah, like ethical, moral, and maybe even language barriers. I mean, anyone who's a first generation American or a first generation citizen of any country can kind of understand what that means. Like, my grandparents, grew up in Egypt, and I grew up in America. And, there was this kind of understanding that we're related, but we're different. And there's some bit of a language barrier there. But, I don't think it was too disruptive per se.
Would you compare a child that is being raised in the metaverse to a child who moved to a different country early on?
I mean, they are kind of growing up in a different universe, in a sense.
Yeah, the difference is it's easier to bring someone into your universe if it's. Well, I'm not sure. Go ahead, Neil.
No, I just wanted to get there's some more comments in the chat from the Blessed Art guys, Lydia, who actually, I think like you, they've been doing something hugely inventive, and it's kind of interesting because apparently professors in India are using some of those kind of sort of videotapes as to supplement their education. It's kind of really beginning to kind of feed in new kind of ways. There's also a comment from Anastasia, I get the name right, Swietzinska, who's been appearing on Digital Futures for her work, AR, VR, and so on, who's using these tools in practice and in new ways. So, we're seeing the kind of the development of something new and extraordinary for sure. That's absolutely the case in both in education and also in practice itself. I just want to kind of relay those comments.
Awesome. Thank you, Blessed Art. Thank you, Anastasia. All right. I would like to ask if Kuba had anything else to say, because I know you got kicked out of the stage a couple of times.
No, I had some issues connecting, but this has been such an inspiring session, honestly. Even little things like mentioning how putting chairs influenced people's behavior. I think this is what I love about the metaverse a lot. It's rediscovering very human, natural behaviors. Same with the trees. It can be a fake tree, but it does something to us. A window in an invisible wall can suggest a wall, even though it's not there. People have phobias that we might not be aware of while designing. This is all one huge learning opportunity to actually implement in both physical and digital architecture. So I love hearing this kind of discussions and discoveries. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Leach. It's always good to hear from you.
Well, thank you. I just want to say that I just want to make one further comment, because I'm really kind of, in my world is primarily kind of AI now, but what reminds me about this, I mean, there's still a little bit glitches, it's still challenges and so on, and to some extent navigating this space is still a little bit crude, but let's think what was happening a few years ago in AI. We got GANs 2019. It was a surprise. And then people started using them and they were kind of struggling a bit. And then all of a sudden we get DALL-E, Midjourney and so on, which really ramped things up. So we can only expect that the technology is going to improve. And we need to kind of familiarize ourselves with this environment and explore this inventively to see how we can use it for the benefit of humanity. And I think that's the real sort of challenge. But for sure, the technology is going to improve over time. So I think this is almost like a new chapter. I think we should really almost do this as a regular event on Digital Futures, if not all events, to take it into the metaverse, because I think it's opening up new forms of thinking, new forms of designing, and new forms of social behavior that are just truly fascinating. This is history in the making. It's truly fascinating.
What I always say is that the stage that we're experiencing right now is just the worst stage ever, and it's only going to get better. And even this design of the stage is changing. That's hardly ever the case when I'm going to university, and it's always the same room. Here, we can really see the evolution, not only in technology, but also in design. Exciting.
I just
We're ready for Christmas too.
Just a comment, because I think Matheus has been really a kind of pioneer in pushing forward these sort of ideas and things. But some of my other students, also led by you actually, have really shocked me and blown away. I was worried that some of the essays a few years ago were so good that they might have been generated by AI. Now I'm getting essays generated by AI, and they're using three types of AI. They're using text to kind of turn into a story. They're using another AI to go and turn it into human voice, and then they're using these Midjourney and so on to give visuals to go with the text itself. So we're entering an entirely new domain in which all these things are kind of coming into play, and the way we play with them is going to define our future. So this is the digital future, and you guys are the future. So it's great to have you on board today, and let's look forward to even more of these sessions in the future. Fantastic, really impressive session. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, everyone. It was great being here, and I'm looking forward as well to the next session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful job, guys.
Thank you.